Welcome to In the Groove with Todd and Jackie, the podcast where good vibes meet great conversations and change makers take center stage.
Each week, we sit down with inspiring authors, impactful speakers, and visionary leaders who are making a difference in the world.
We're bringing you powerful insights, engaging stories, and actionable ideas to amplify your voice and spark meaningful change.
So get ready to get in the groove as we dive into conversations that uplift, inspire, and empower.
Now, here's Todd and Jackie.
Hey, it's another groovy day, and that's because we make it that way. Welcome to In the Groove with Todd and Jackie. Todd's not here, but I'm Jackie, and this is the podcast where good vibes meet great conversation and change makers take center stage. Why is Todd not here? Well, unfortunately, he is being treated in the hospital for something that has taken a while for them to figure out and for the right people to be on staff to perform a procedure that needs to be done. So unfortunately, he's there. We miss him, but the show must go on. And so you just have me today. Sorry about that, folks. But anyway, we talk to people on this podcast who want to expand their mission, their message, and maybe even monetize their business with their message. And also besides this podcast with Todd and I, which Todd and I really enjoy doing together, we coach people. We help people to find their unique message based on their experiences that they've had in life and the lessons that they have learned from that. And we help them to master that message and get on stages to share it to the ideal audience who needs to hear it. Some of those stages are like TEDx stages, which is pretty prestigious. It's an international organization. You can typically find a TEDx event happening all over the world at any time throughout any 24-hour period of a day, because they are so unique, and yet they're all individually organized. And so a lot of times they're looking for very particular messages at their events. But what we do is we help an individual, and it could be a young person, even 9, 10 years old, who feels that they've solved an issue in their life, an issue or a problem. And because they were able to make it easier or solved completely, they've got this great methodology that they want to share with other people. That's basically the premise of a TEDx talk. So we help people to determine what is that problem, how many people does it affect besides themselves, and how did they solve it, and how might they encourage someone else in an audience of 1 million people to possibly use that methodology as well to solve the problem for themselves. And if you want to know about this type of coaching, and if you've ever wanted to, or considered being on a TEDx stage, you can find out more about our programs. You can go to toddandjackie.com. There is a tab there that's called the Impact and Outreach tab. And that's going to take you to all sorts of things that we do, even humanitarian missions that we host. And you can also go to JackieBailey360.com and see the TEDx talks from a lot of our young clients, as well as a few of our adult clients. They're all there as well. So today, bringing some good vibes so we can have a great conversation is changemaker Loretta Breuning. She is a professor emerita of management at California State University. She's a creator of courses and programs to help people be happy. She's the author of Habits of a Happy Brain, Retrain Your Brain to Boost Your Serotonin, Dopamine, Oxytocin, and endorphin levels. And you can find her at Inner Mammal Institute.org. Loretta, it is delightful to have you. Welcome to In the Groove with Jackie today.
Thank you. So nice to meet you.
Well, it's nice to meet you too. And I love what you're doing because it's a lot easier, it seems, to be unhappy. There's a lot of reasons to be unhappy, I guess I should say. And I'm excited to hear about how you help people choose something differently or change their brain so that they accomplish more of that. But before we go too deep into that, let's just give our audience a quick insight as to what they might come away from today, a real quick message, if you will, about what they can look forward to hearing.
Sure. So, our happy brain chemicals are not designed to be on all the time. They have a very specific job. They turn on to get your attention when you have an opportunity to meet a survival need. So, we're like indoctrinated to think other people just go through life on this cloud of happy chemicals and we're somehow missing out. And then everyone ends up feeling like they're missing out because they are not designed to be on all the time. So the way I learned
Interesting.
about this is to know how they work in animals. And in animals, they have a very specific job to turn on a specific type of need, meeting a need. And then they turn off because that's how they do their job. They have to turn off in order to turn on. So if people knew that, then they can just accept their natural ups and downs rather than feeling like something is wrong.
Oh, I love that. I think especially when you're hanging around extroverts a lot and they just seem to like always be happy people, it kind of makes you feel like, what am I missing? Right? But I'm also glad to know that animals have emotions. Um, I guess maybe it's not labeled or defined or maybe even appears the same way that our emotions do, but I find that interesting. So let's go for a second into how you I don't know, found out about this information, how you developed the knowledge that you have. Tell me a little bit about how your story and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Well, I grew up around a lot of unhappiness, so I was always wanting to understand. And in my context, it was not an obvious cause. So it was like a mystery, like, what is everybody so upset about? And I gravitated toward academic psychology. But as the years went by and I had my own children and thousands of students, I started to see that doing everything by the book of academic psychology did not guarantee that everybody's happy all the time. Quite the
Mm.
contrary. So that's when I started digging deeper. And first, I discovered this book called Chimpanzee Politics. And it was such an eye opener for me, and partly the content, but partly that this knowledge has been lying around since the 70s and nobody told me. And in fact, even the guy who wrote Chimpanzee Politics took it back because it's so controversial that animals are nasty to each other and they only cooperate when it helps them meet an immediate need. And that's
Mm.
why our brain is designed to turn on a happy chemical when there's an opportunity to meet an immediate need. And if the chemical were on all the time, then it couldn't trigger that behavior. And what it defines as immediate need is wired by your own past happy chemicals: dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphin. Each of them meets a different need, and where it's wired by our individual past experience.
So how did knowing this or learning this help you with the past experience you said that wasn't quite so happy?
Yeah. So, first, as I mentioned, just the self acceptance of like, wow, everybody has the same struggle. There's nothing wrong with me. Ups and downs are normal. And then the next step is to understand what does trigger happy chemicals in animals. As
Mm.
soon as an organism's physical needs are met, they focus on social needs. And animals are very competitive. And so, when your physical needs are met, these competitive needs can drive you crazy, even though you're perfectly healthy and safe, that you're not appreciating the life you have because the animal brain creates life or death feelings about competition. Because in the animal world, if you don't rise in the status hierarchy, you don't pass on your genes, and then
Mm.
your DNA is wiped off the face of the earth. So this is why the animal brain creates these intense feelings. But once I knew that, again, I was like, wow, I can just relax. This is not real. This is just an old sort of chemical response.
Well, that is rather eye-opening because it does help you understand some of those primal feelings that we have, right? And that they're good and they're normal. They're there for a
Yeah.
reason,
Yeah. And
right?
then
Yeah.
that I could find healthier ways of sparking them. So, however I spark them now was wired when I was young, because that's what our peak, when our peak neuroplasticity is. So, everybody has wired whatever they think is the path to rewards is what they observed when they were young. And that's not with any finger pointing. It's just how it is. And
Right.
no one has this ideal background because, we're all a bunch of chimps trying to meet needs. So then if I say to myself, well, what's a better way to give myself that particular feeling I'm looking for? And then if I repeat that, it builds a new neural pathway. And I'm not saying that I should feel like the top gorilla all the time, but at least I don't feel like I have to do something harmful to be the top gorilla. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So we all have these primal reactions to things, but we also, maybe as humans alone, we have the ability to override those, right? Whereas animals probably don't override those things. They just go with the instinct and what their brain chemicals are telling them to do. But we as humans
Yes.
have the ability to say, I feel like I want to punch that guy in the face. But if I do, what are the consequences going to be?
That's good. But then the next step is, but then you go around feeling like you want to punch them all the time. So, how can I
Mm,
stop feeling that way? That's a harder thing. And
right.
when you say that our human cortex can override, but it's much harder than we think. So, the simple analogy is if I'm riding a horse and I want to get the horse to go somewhere, just thinking it, just saying it doesn't work. You have to manage that horse in a very complex way. And that's the knowledge that we all need to guide our inner mammal, our mammalian brain.
Mm, wow. Okay. So I don't know if you're an expert on this or not, or if you've encountered this situation, but social media, devices, the internet, instant knowledge at the snap of a finger, that is not natural to our human existence. So how are these type of things that we use all the time affecting this ability to control our emotions or maybe even understand them?
Thanks. Well, so I have a very different perspective on this. So, first, we need to know that the mammalian part of our brain is nonverbal because animals can't talk. So, the
Mm,
verbal part of our brain does all the talking and we think it's in charge. But actually, our chemicals are controlled by our mammalian limbic system, which is people have heard of like the amygdala, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus. Those are all inherited from animals. And that system works together to control our body, which includes the chemicals that create our emotions. But these chemicals are motivators that either tell you go forward towards something good or go backward to avoid something bad. So this is the
mm,
animal operating system. Now, when you do things because of this, you go forward or go back, but you don't know why you're doing it because your animal brain can't tell you. So your human cortex has to come up with a reason. And it looks for a reason to make you look good and to make you feel okay. And it comes up with a socially acceptable reason. This is
mm,
why when people do things like, I don't know why I did that. So then what good reason can I find to make myself feel okay about it? So social media
mm,
comes from this verbal thing that we're all doing. We're influenced by the other person's verbal brain. But before there was social media, there were other stupid ways that people had to make themselves feel okay about what they were doing and to learn from other excuses that other people gave. And I often use the example that thousands of years ago, people believed when they had a feeling that it was the gods talking to them.
Mm.
Like 500 years ago, when people got sick, it was like, because you gave me the evil eye. I think, I feel bad because you gave me the evil eye. Thousands of years ago, people had human sacrifice because they thought that controlled the universe. So
Right.
people have always had cockamamie ways to deal with, it's like, how does the horse and the rider communicate with each other? But if you watch animal training videos, you can sort of start to see, oh, so that's what it takes to manage my inner mammal.
Yeah. That is really interesting because animals, they act and they don't really care. Was that right or wrong? They just do. But we as humans, then we do something and then we go, should I have done that? Was there something I should have done? Now I'm going to be in trouble because I did that. So it's interesting how all of these chemicals are happening in our brain at the same time. And boy, no wonder we get in conundrums, right? No wonder we are faced with challenging relationships and things that make us, unhappy, if you will, because there's just all this thought process and language and stuff going on all around us.
Yeah.
I want to get back to that in a few minutes, but first, Loretta, I think this is a great time to take a small break, catch up, and we'll be right back.
When you give the body what it needs, it does have the ability to heal. It's not easy, but it's worth it.
Cheryl Kuzo. She is the integrative medicine nurse practitioner. She's a health strategist, and she used to be debilitated by Lyme disease, but no longer.
What is the most important message that you have for them today?
The most important message I have is to not give up on yourself and to not give away your power. You have the ability to heal, and I am the perfect testament to that. If people want to work with me one-on-one, they could book a free call to talk to me, and they can book that on kuzohealth.com.
Hey everyone, welcome back to In the Groove with Todd and Jackie. Unfortunately, we're missing Todd today, but you got me. And we're talking to Loretta Breuning, and she's been telling us some interesting things about our brains and chemicals and the way that we react to things, whether we're living in a mammalian existence of just reacting and acting to things, or whether we're also using our human additional tools that we have. And so Loretta, it's so delightful to have you here. I'm learning a lot from you. I wanted to ask you, how do we control our brains to speak? How do we say the things that we know that we need to say because we have that capability as humans over the mammalian brain?
Sure. Well, animals are, when you said animals don't hold back, so they do hold back, but they're wired by their own experience, their own early experience, because that's when our brain wires. So if a little monkey reaches for a banana near a bigger monkey, it's going to get bitten. And that bite can be life-threatening in the state of nature. So it gets wired by the pain to say, whoa, I'm not going to reach for a banana near a bigger individual. So animals can restrain an impulse in order to have a short-run benefit or protect themselves from harm. But we humans, we don't want to bite children to teach them lessons. If children never have negative consequences, then they never learn any self-restraint, which is sort of what today's culture is. So that's really a complex thing, but each of us is wired by these consequences that we experienced when we're young. And a human can have a more perception of a long-term consequence, but only if we learn it. And if we didn't learn it when we're young, it's hard to learn later on. And I like the work you did about holding back, people holding back what they want to say, and then finally letting it out, and how it affects them. And it reminded me of a really amazing experience that I had After my mother died, I learned certain things about her life, and it was very moving. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I would have known, when you're young and often, I always heard my mother talk about how bad her life was.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that, to hear that. But she never actually told me the worst things that happened to her. And when I learned it, I was very amazed, and I wish I'd been more forgiving. So when something bad happens to a person in the past, you think, okay, get over it. Stop constantly throwing it in my face. But we need to know that people are wired by early experience. And we have to make a conscious effort to build new wiring. But nobody really teaches us that, and it takes a lot of repetition. But one thing I learned about my mother, I mean, this is not as, I won't go into all horrible stuff, but she had to drop out of school when she was 14 to help support her family. And this was not like a crisis. This was her culture, and this was what everybody did. And her three sisters had to all drop out of school and start working to support themselves. And the fourth sister, they got together and they said, let's let her go to high school. So when that fourth sister died, her daughter wrote an obituary that said, my mother was a graduate of such and such high school. And the cousin, this was my cousin, she sent me the obituary. And I said to her, oh, that's nice that you wrote your mother's story up. I didn't even know where my mother went to high school. And she said, oh, your mother didn't go to high school. And she told me this. And I was like, oh, that explains so much, because my mother had this sense of shame. She moved me to a community with better schooling so that I could have a better life. But she had this constant sense of shame. And I could have been a little more understanding if I knew that. But then I really need to be grateful to her for not telling me, because she didn't want to burden me with her burden. It's a very difficult choice, but there's a lot of benefit to holding things back. And then you just want to let them out, but it's not always the time.
Yeah. I think you mentioned that your childhood was somewhat traumatic. Was some of that because of your mother's shame, or some of the things that she was still holding on from her own childhood?
Yes, I would just say that she was a wreck. And yet, so my problem was that my mother was always a wreck. But when I knew that she was a wreck because much worse things happened to her, and she protected me from those things. I mean, you hear about sexual abuse, but also hunger, and also, then having to go to work is like the least of it. So she made sure that I had a good father that supported us and that didn't abuse us. So I could be grateful for that, but rather I partly took that for granted, and partly,
Yeah.
her anxiety, her continual anxiety was, so that's why each brain is wired by its own experience. And I could say, well, what are you so upset about? And then when I knew how the brain works, I was like, oh, so I know what you were upset about.
Yeah. So I think you and we met somewhat because we were on a summit together, and it was a summit to help parents of kids and homeschoolers and that kind of thing. Is that your comfort audience? Is that the audience that you like to speak to parents perhaps about how their kids' brains work, or who is the ideal audience if that's not it?
I know you're not supposed to say everybody, but as you could see that everybody has to manage their brain, I would like to
Right.
say everybody who is shaped by this unhealthy culture that we have now, I think, which is, it's not my fault. It's the world forced me to do this,
Yeah.
because that's what our verbal brain thinks. Because it's like, why did I eat that pizza? I don't know why, because I didn't consciously say to myself, I am going to eat the whole pizza. So, so your mammal brain does it. You don't know why. And then you blame some external force, but then you lose your power over your brain. So the in between connecting these is the neural pathways built from past experience. And nobody tells you about this. And those neural pathways are like the difference between your native language and learning a language when you're an adult. Your native language is so deeply wired in when you're a child that you could think of a word effortlessly and you didn't even remember working hard to learn it. Whereas when you learn a foreign language, it's so hard to think of the word, yet you worked on it consciously so much. And that is what it takes to change, to rewire yourself after your peak neuroplasticity of youth. And it's all because of this chemical called myelin, which we have when we're young, which you could say is like the highway building material of the brain. And once puberty is over, we have very little myelin. So that's why it's hard to rewire and why we all run. Our myelinated pathways are so efficient that we flow there without consciously being aware of it, but we can become consciously aware of it.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is both exciting and a kind of a little scary from my
Yes.
viewpoint is when children are young, we really are shaping them. I mean, we as adults, we have this great power to shape and wire these brains and those neural pathways to create beliefs, to create behaviors, to create reactions to things. And so if we aren't fully protecting our children away from all of those like things that can cause negative
Yeah.
wiring to happen,
Yeah.
yeah. That sounds to me like that's what causes a lot of future bad behavior is because our brain's been sort of trained, right?
Yeah, but when you use the word protecting, so that's what a lot of people protect too much. And then the child never develops skills because let's think when a little monkey has to find its own food, it fails a lot. Animals fail a lot in their quest for food and they go hungry, and hunger motivates them to try again. And our kids don't go hungry, they don't fail, and they don't build the ability to try again. And then they can't build it later on. So this is really problematic. And I use the analogy of that if your kid cries when they try to tie their shoes and you think, I'm going to get them Velcro shoes so I can make them happy. And then you end up making your child unhappy with your excessive effort to make them happy.
No, I get it. Okay.
Thank you.
Nice. I think that was a great lesson. So how do people find you, Loretta, if they want to work with you, if they want to get to know what you're doing, if they want to get your book, where would they find you?
InnerMammalInstitute.org, InnerMammalInstitute.org. And I have a free 5-day happy chemical jumpstart, InnerMammalInstitute.org/jumpstart, where you get 5 emails, one on each of 5 chemicals: dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphin, and cortisol, the stress chemical. And I also have lots of free resources, videos, coaching, training program, everything you could want. And many books. Many books.
Yeah. Oh, nice. So you have more than just the one that I introduced you with. Oh, cool.
Yeah, I have a workbook and books on special topics for people who like animals, people with status anxiety, anything.
Yeah, cool. Well, as you know, the name of this podcast is In the Groove. And so what that means to Todd and I is we're in alignment with our mission, with our purpose, with our value system and the principles that we live by. We're kind of in the groove. So I want to ask you as our last question today, Loretta, how do you get in the groove every day?
Thank you. Well, every morning I spend my first few hours writing. And I'm not saying people should do that. I just love it. And the way I think about it is when you're writing, you get to say whatever you want. And it's a difficult choice because if you just say whatever you want, nobody's going to read it. But at least it's an opportunity to have your own say. and I shut out everything else. And then I feel like I've accomplished something before I start scattering my attention. So I think it's anybody can really focus for some time. And in the morning is when we have the most focus to do that one thing that's the hardest, but the most valuable.
So are you journaling, or are you writing down grievances to get them, out? Or are you writing down things that make you happy or goals?
Oh, no. I was always writing a book.
Okay.
And then after I wrote enough books, I thought, I should stop writing books. So I started writing Substacks. I'm always writing something.
Okay. Excellent. Well, that's awesome. So hopefully there's a place where we can go and check out all your writings. Someday you'll release all of those, right?
No, they're all on my
They're
website.
all there.
Everything's
Beautiful.
there.
All right. Well, it was delightful to talk with you, to get to know you better, and I'm impressed with your work and excited to learn even more about you. And perhaps you and I will share a stage again soon on another summit or
Great.
conference or something. So,
Great.
Loretta, thank you for joining us today. And to our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate your concerns for Todd, although at this taping, by the time you see this, he will probably be home and well and all is good. But we appreciate your listening. Tell a friend about In the Groove with Todd and Jackie and let them know about the amazing guests we have like Loretta. So we'll see you all next time. Bye for now. That's a wrap for this episode of In the Groove with Todd and Jackie, where good vibes meet great conversations and change makers take center stage.
We hope you've been inspired by today's guest and are ready to bring more positivity, connection, and impact into your world.
If you love this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs a little groove in their life.
And don't forget to check us out on toddandjackie.com for more great conversations.
Until next time, keep shining, keep grooving, and keep making a difference.